Hello everybody, my name is Mr. Chauffepied and today we're going to talk about asynchronous replication and disaster recovery. This webinar is going to be recorded, so you're going to receive an email from our marketing where you can download the video, and you are all muted. So if you want to ask any questions, please type into your chat box and I will try to answer at the end of the session. So we're going to talk about disaster recovery projects and DataCore's SANsymphony V R9. So in this webinar, we're going to talk about what is the difference between asynchronous versus synchronous replication. We talk about overview of replication and how does it work with DataCore, new functionalities introduced in version 9, and of course we're going to do a demo at the end. So please ask any questions in the chat box and I will reply at the end of the session. First of all, sometimes we have a lot of questions about what is synchronous versus asynchronous mirroring. So in the next 5 minutes, we're going to talk about what is the difference between synchronous mirror and asynchronous mirror. So first of all, when we talk about synchronous mirror, we are talking about data copied in two locations physically with acknowledgement on both locations at the same times to the host. So basically, every single write is written on each vdisk logically on two separate physical disks array, or disk arrays. So the writes are simultaneous over two locations. Now, when we talk about asynchronous replication, so when we talk about writes, mirrors are not containing the same value, if you want, or the same disk, or the same blocks changes at the same time. Why? Because we need to copy over the IP over a small or big pipe for moving data from location A to location B. Therefore, in this case, there is no acknowledgement for the remote side to the applications and for the hosts. So eventually, because it's asynchronous replication, eventually the asynchronous mirror will catch up, and at any given point in time or time shifting, the source and destination will look alike. But versus synchronous and asynchronous, don't expect to see the same data at the same time on both locations. So this is a small comparison. If you do have a write over here, it's synchronous replication, and here it's asynchronous. So as you can see at T0, the data or the write is copied twice or the same in same location when you talk about synchronous replication. But as you can see, there's no write yet for the asynchronous side. Now, when you got to write number 2, again, it's written synchronously on the main side, but it's not yet on the remote side. And as you can see, the write number 1 has not coming yet. So it's latency and so on. So as you can see, eventually the source and asynchronous mirror will catch up and eventually will be in sync. So don't expect to have the same amount of data and the data copied over on synchronous replication versus asynchronous replication. So what are the considerations when you talk about synchronous mirror and asynchronous mirror? First of all, in terms of acknowledgement, when we talk about asynchronous, there's no acknowledgement only on the primary side, but there's no acknowledgement from the secondary side or disaster recovery side, where there are some acknowledgements for the synchronous mirrors. In terms of distance limitations, there are a limitation in terms of synchronous mirroring. Okay, now I think we talk about 100K max in terms of fiber channel or iSCSI, which for asynchronous replication, there are no limitations for distances. We can work on LAN, MAN, WAN, any kind of IP. In terms of requirements for high-speed links, yes, you need to have high-speed connections for synchronous replication, where it's not the case for asynchronous replication. When we talk about multipath failover, yes, you need a client on the hosts where it's not needed for the asynchronous replication. And there's a failover and failback automatic and transparent for synchronous replication, which is not the case for asynchronous replication. When the synchronous mirror is inadequate, it's easy. When you've got a long distance traveling between two sites, the write has to complete twice the transmission time. So you've got the site A to site B and B to A, so the acknowledgement. So basically, when you've got 10 milliseconds one way, you have to compete both ways, i.e. 20 milliseconds and higher the transactions are going to be, the latency will be higher. Therefore, we are moving towards asynchronous replication because we're going to be within the timeout values for the hosts or the disks. Therefore, if you do have a great latency, we talk about asynchronous replication, and we're going to use the asynchronous mirror for DataCore. The benefits for the replications are multiple, but we've got three in mind. The first one is you can share the data over long distances, and you can replicate the data across MAN, WAN, LAN over IP. The second one is disaster recovery based. So basically, you've got a main site, and if you do have a failure on this site, you need to be able to start up your data and be able to access the data to start your VMs or access your disks. The third one is to have the capability to swap active, passive between sites. And to be honest, DataCore is using this control active site at least 7 to 10 times per year. Why? Because our headquarters is in Miami, and right now it's the cyclone and hurricane season. So we keep moving our data centers across the globe following the weather. So when we talk about asynchronous replication in terms of DataCore, we talk about licenses. So this replication is a license feature which is not included in VL1, but which is included in VL2, 3, 4, and 5. This replication can be based on a mirror disk on the main site, or a single vDisk, i.e. non-mirrored. We are using now a non-proprietary method for transport. So in the past, we were using SMB and FTP. Now it's totally non-SMB or non-FTP. We use our own proprietary, and we are compressing the data, and we are using MD5 and checksum. And if you want to do bidirectional replication, of course, you can use a module which is called ASR, Advanced Site Recovery. So this is a brief overview about how to explain and how to lay out DataCore asynchronous replication. So first of all, we see in this PowerPoint, we've got two sites. One is active, one is standby. Then we do have the main site sending IOs. So we see the block number 4. The number 4 will go through the replication driver, but will be stored momentarily into the buffer, which is a disk space location where all the blocks going to be sent to the remote site will be prepared. And of course, in parallel, the block number 4 must be written on the source disk, okay, to secure the data. In the background, what we are doing is we are sending IO through the WAN, so over IP, to the standby side. So we are sending the blocks to the remote side. Then the blocks are on the standby side will be captured in the replication driver, then eventually written into the local disks. Okay, so here is the functional overview for the replication with asynchronous replication module for DataCore. First of all, when you want to create a partnership, you have to tell us on which IP address you want to talk to. So basically, DataCore will send over IP the blocks. So we need to tell us on which IP address all the blocks will be sent to the remote site. Then the next step is to tell us which vDisk you want to replicate to and from. So in order to replicate to the remote site, the remote virtual disk must be at least the same size or greater than the source disk. So if you've got a 10 gig virtual disk on the main site, you need to have at least a 10 gig virtual disk or greater to the remote site. And as you can see, we can also duplicate the disk identifier. So basically, if you do have any hypervised virtual disks to VMware, Microsoft, or Citrix, we can duplicate the NAA, which is the unique identifier for the disks. And also, there's another tick box called offline initialization we're going to talk about in the next slides. So when the replication are ongoing, first of all you need to initialize the first pass if you want. If you do have some data originally written on virtual disk, if you don't need to initialize for the first time. Then you need to initialize two ways possible. The first one is the offline initialization. So basically, if you do have 5, 10 terabyte plus, you may not need the full bandwidth if you don't have a big IP connectivity between the two sites. So what you can do is initialize offline to on the main site onto a box you're going to transport remotely, and you're going to initialize remotely to the remote ports. And also you've got the possibility to initialize online. So you've got two possibilities, online and offline. Online, it's inbound. Offline, it's I initialize first onto a movable or removable storage. Then we move to the remote side. Then you put everything, all the files into the final destination. When we talk about data consistency for asynchronous replication, we talk about groups. So since version 9, we've introduced a group consistency. So now we can replicate virtual disk through groups. So everything within a group will be traveling or be sent together simultaneously. And of course, you can amend a lot of proprietaries and connectivities and quality of services through the group, i.e. deactivate a group, pause, send a marker, snapshot. Everything can be done as a group level or as individual vDisks level. So when you talk about the asynchronous replication, as I said, we can replicate from A to B, but sometimes when you are running the data from B, it's impossible to run from B to A without breaking the mirror. So this is nearly 99% of the replication tools on the market. Now, with this DataCore asynchronous replication, it's going to be just a tick box to revert the data flow. And you will see in the demo, it's fairly easy to understand. And again, we can deactivate from both sides the data flow, and you can stop and send checkpoints for data consistency and also split connectivity. What is the normal scheme for sending I/O and to ensure to have data consistency? First of all, you need to stop I/O and flush the cache. So everything will be driven on the host level. So at the host level, you're gonna put the data in the hot backup consistency, flush the cache, so at least you know you got all the transactions flushed. Then, obviously, DataCore will make sure this virtual list will be deactivated, will be offline from the client on the left. Then all the pending I/O going to be sent to the client on the right through the DataCore. Then eventually the connectivity will be in read-write mode on the right-hand side. Okay. So this is the typical scenario. Then the IOs are flowing through the data core number 2. So the activate and standby path will be activated. The path will be online on the data core. And obviously, while the paths are active, we're going to accept further IOs and block changes from the data core number 2. So the I/O will be ready to be replicated back to the standby side. So this is the ASR capability. It's bullet number 3. So the new enhancements introduced in version 9 last year were multi-site replications. So we can create multiple connections to multiple servers in groups or not. We got the capability now to do failover test mode. So it's a simulating failover without impacting the production. And we've got the transfer priority, where you can give us which link we're going to be used for the most critical vdisks and the less critical vdisks. So let's talk about every single bullet points. The first one is the connectivity overview. So in the past, we were able to do one-to-one, so server site A to site B. Now we can group up to 99 groups together, and all can be replicated into a bidirectional site for replication. And there's no limit about how many vdisks or groups were going to be replicated. Of course, the limitation will be your disk space and your bandwidth between the sites. So in the past, we had site A to site B. Of course, you need an IP connectivity between the two sites. Now we've got new capabilities, A to C, A to B, and A to D. But also, we do have C to A, B to A, and D to A. So we call it in red one-to-many, and in blue many-to-one. So basically, this is the all supported configurations. But then there's another one we can be interesting for you is the many-to-many. So you can replicate to many sites as long as you do have replication licenses, connectivities, and of course storage underneath each data core. The next module is the test mode overview. So as you can see and know, when you talk about disaster recovery, rarely the customers are testing the the replication and also testing the data. Why? Because you cannot do it online. You have to shut down physically the main site, then start up the remote site to see if the data is consistent, start and the virtual machines, and so on and so forth. So it's quite IO demanding, and of course you have to stop the production. So nobody knows and tests really the how to disaster recovery. So with the test mode, you can of course test in terms of DataCore, but also you can link to SRM if you are using SRM for VMware and the test mode for SRM for VMware. So basically, what we can do now is to, within the test mode, we can enter this test per group or per virtual disk. Then you can activate in read-write on the disaster recovery in order to see if you can access the data, if you can start up your virtual machines or your databases. And the test mode is a temporary measure for starting the replication of or starting the data. So we can display graphically if you are active or passive in terms of test mode, and this is how it should be usually. So usually in disaster recovery mode, you've got a production and DR site, you've got an active and passive. Then the passive is never presented to any kind of OS because it's offline. So in this case, what you can see here is the DR site cannot access the data. When you activate the test mode, temporarily the test mode virtual disk will be accessed in read-write, and you can start access your data. And while the test mode is activated, of course, the flow of IOs are still coming from the production to the DR site. So basically, in the background, we are storing the data on a special disk space while you are in test mode activation. The last is the transfer. There's a transfer priority per virtual disk. So basically, you can tell us into a storage profile high speed or low speed for replication. So it's per vdisk basis, and it's easy to configure. It's in the storage profiles per vdisks, and since PSP2, you can introduce your own profile for vdisks. Okay, so it's totally dynamic, and you need to adjust the bandwidths on the fly. So you need to have storage profiles in place, and of course everything critical will have more link shares, so all the data will be sent in priority compared to high, normal, and low. So basically, graphically, how does it work? So in this screenshot, we do have various vdisks, and the number one, the top one, 1A vdisk, is critical. So as you can see, you've got less latency than the others. So in this case, what you have is the active versus the other one, which are active but with a time lag. So we've got a bit of latency across the vdisks. So as you can see, higher the profile will be, first the blocks will be sent to the remote site. In terms of licensing, we've got 5 packages, VL1 to 5, and as you can see, as the asynchronous replication, we've got not included in VL1 and included of VL2, 3, 4, and 5. So this way, you can add on if you want for VL1, and then you've got in by default for the other ones. Why it's not included for VL1? Because we talk about SMB projects, and sometimes SMB projects have got no intention to have disaster recovery, but later on they may have, so therefore they can buy the license if they want. So I will present you the lab layout, and if you do have some questions, please type them into the chat box. So in the lab, we're going to have two data centers. One is called Bordeaux, and we're going to have one DataCore's SANsymphony V talking to one application server called APP Bordeaux. And we do have a replication to one called Paris. And this one have got a server called APP Paris. So we've got one vDisk with data, and we've got an IP connectivity between the two sides. So I will bounce to my demo center. Here I see the Paris and here the Bordeaux. So I connect to the first one, and I see I've got a vDisk called a data_Bordeaux presented to my application server. Now I'm gonna talk about this application server, and the disk is here, and if we explore it, I've got nothing yet. So what I do is I will create some data. So test disaster recovery at Bordeaux. Then I go to my local disk and I copy some fonts, okay, to give a bit of data onto this vDisk. Okay, so I copy the data, and I'm generating a lot of IOs, a few megabytes. Now, if I look at in the DataCore, I see some data rates. So the data has gone to the other side, which is hosted in Paris. So let's talk about and see what Paris got for us. So when I go to Paris, I have got the data virtual disks, which is offline, is grayed out, and it's a standby here. And of course, as you can see, the vDisk is presented just to make sure. See, I refresh, it should be going, it's gone. Okay, so I've got no access to the data. So now, what I want to do is to activate the sides. So I was writing from Bordeaux to Paris. Now I want to access the data from Paris. So the first one, I need to move over all the data. So if I click on active this side, in the background, we're gonna deactivate everything regarding Bordeaux and activating all the Paris. So from grayed out, it's gonna be colored here. So I'm activating. So it's being activated. And as you can see here, it's active now. And if I go to my host now, I should see data, and I should see my data written from Bordeaux. And let's have a look. There we go. So I've got my data copied over, and I've got my fonts. So now I've stopped all my IOs from Bordeaux, and I'm writing to Paris. So let's check from the Bordeaux side. Okay, so I'm check on the application servers. I will scan, and I should lose. Okay, so all the production is down from Bordeaux side. Now, what I'll do is I will carry on the writes to Paris, because now I'm running on disaster recovery side. So I create a new new set of data, and test DR Paris this time, and I copy some data. So, okay, so I copy, okay, in order to generate more IOs. Okay, so now on my V disk, I do have some data, and the data is copied over from Paris this time. So now, when my disaster recovery plan is over, now I want to fail back to my primary site, which is for me Bordeaux. So in this case, what I'm going to do is going to say, okay, Mr. DataCore, now I want to deactivate my active side, i.e. Paris, and fail back to Bordeaux. And here is the advanced side recovery taking place. Deactivate, are you sure? Yes. So we're gonna be in passive, okay? It's grayed out here, okay? So it's grayed out. And now, if I go to my server, I should rescan and my disk will be gone, because now all the production is about to run from the Bordeaux side. And I will check with you. My disk is active. Okay, so check with you. It's active. And if I go back to my client, I should discover my disk, and my data from Paris should be also in it. Okay, here we are. So this is my my test, and I see my data. Now, this one is good, but you need to stop all the IOs from the main site, which is not practical sometimes. It's practical when you've got a major failure, but if you want to test it in order to test the connections and connectivities and so on and so forth, it might not be helpful. So now I will create a new type of data called test. And this time I will test it with the DR mode. Okay, so I'm gonna test it, and I copy the data into it. Okay, so I'm copying data onto this this mode. Okay, so I'm copying. I take some data and I copy here. Okay, in order to generate. But this time I don't want to fail over. I want to enter the test mode onto the Paris side without turning off the main site. So as you can see here, I'm online on the Bordeaux side. And so what I will do is I want to activate the Paris side without turning off my main site. So what I do is I go to Paris, and I will activate the test mode is here. So I'm activating. Are you sure? Yes. And the data is active now on the main side, and also active on the disaster recovery side momentarily. And if I check on the server, I should see all the data, including the new disaster recovery. Here we go. So as you can see, I've got all the data, including my disaster recovery test. And if I want to carry on the production, I will write a new set of data onto the main site, and you will see the production will carry on with no problem, because we are sending the IO flow still to the outside. So as you can see, I'm still active, but on the DR side, I'm still through my DR test side. Sorry about flicking all the remote desktops, but as you can see, my data is still available. I can delete the data. I can delete. I can do whatever I want. I can delete the data, I can copy it, I can whatever I want. Okay, but when I'm done, okay, so I can explore, I can do another. I am on the DR site and I call it blah blah, for instance. Now, when I will turn off, the blah blah folder will be gone, and the new set of data coming from Bordeaux will be replacing. So I'll show you. I deactivate the mode. Are you sure? Okay, so I will be offline. Okay, then if I enter again, are you sure? Yes. I do a rescan. Okay, so the host should see some new disks. So let's have a look. There we go. So the blah blah folder has gone, and I've got all the DR. Sorry, what I need to do is do a offline, because this is still the old disk in the on the server. So if you should offline and online, no, usually you clear out everything related to the into the disk, and I should be able to access if there we go. So as you can see, the blah blah folder is gone and replaced by the folder written previously. So this is how it works, and of course you can deactivate easily by exiting, and of course you will be offline. Now the in terms of data consistency, what you will do if you want is to do a snapshot. So for snapshot, you can set a snap, and the snapshot will monitor all the time the delta between the sites, site A and site B. Then what they do, you can send markers to have data consistency through the site. So in order to send a marker, you can, from the main site, you can send a marker here. So mark checkpoint, and a marker will be sent to the site, which is the remote site. Then you can take a snapshot for data consistency. Also, you can create groups. So add to group. Let's say you call it SAP. You add a group, and you vdisk to the group. So again, you can run replication through the group, and you can do a lot of things: deactivate or checkpoint or split, whatever. If you want to remove the group, no problem. Right click, delete, and the data is still on the virtual disk. So this is it for the disaster recovery webinar. So do you have any questions? Please type in the box, and I will try to answer all the questions. I've got some questions about mirroring. Can I use mirroring for mirrors and non-mirrors? Yes, you can use mirrors and non-mirrors vdisks. which bandwidth do I need between the sites? A good question, but basically it's not up to us. So basically you need to think about how long do you need to start up the production on the remote site. So it's based on two factors. The first one is the how many megabyte, terabyte, or gigabyte I need to transport through the link, and the second factor is how big is the link. So we do have an Excel spreadsheet where you can fill the slots when how many terabyte or gigabyte I have versus the bandwidth, and it tells you how long does it take to replicate the data. So there's no more questions. So I leave you. Yes, another one. Okay. But DataCore supports also synchronous replication. Is it possible to enter test mode for which one? Test mode for synchronous or asynchronous? Synchronous. No, there's no test mode for synchronous. So you can split the mirror and see if you can see the data, but there's no test mode for synchronous replication. It's only for asynchronous replication. So no more questions, guys? So as I said, you will receive the link for the webinar. So you're gonna receive the video. So it's gonna be easy to play again. So thank you for attending this webinar. I hope it was very helpful for you. And we're gonna put more webinars for the web for you. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a nice day.